Vote counting is underway in Edo State, and the electorate, as well as the contenders, are apprehensive. But the pendulum swings at the end of the whole exercise remains to be seen. Well, joining us to discuss this event in Edo State is political analyst Victor Okhai. Good morning to you again. Good to have you with us. Well, while Victor gets himself acquainted, we wanted to obviously discuss the latest. We know that there are a few more LGAs to be announced, yes. But not to be too preemptive, it does look as though the PDP, at least in the last few results that have been collated, have been securing more votes than the APC. Of course, that's not the final. We don't know for sure what the final vote tallies will be, but it does look as though, from what we've seen so far, PDP had been winning certain LGAs. That's what some would describe as a landslide, actually. So it'd be interesting. Like, I think also always with elections, it's always interesting, of course, to find out the results. But because this one was so fraught from the very beginning, where you had Obaseki, who was obviously the incumbent governor for the APC, being disqualified in order to stand to see whether or not he'd be selected to run for re-election for the APC, him then going over to the People's Democratic Party, becoming their candidate, them putting him on his ticket, and then us reaching this election day with so much disdain and so much allegations of infighting and outfighting and proxy violence, to see that the people of Edo appear to have, from what we've seen so far, appear to be backing the PDP.
Yeah, that's what it's looking at. Reports that we are receiving now is Obaseki is currently leading with over 50,000 votes. Out of 11 local government areas. It seems like he's gotten about 8 out of those areas secured, and leaving Yamu with about 3 of them. Well, I think you're absolutely right. It seems like the people of Edo State are really trying to make sure that the whole system. I read somewhere someone was saying that this victory, if Obaseki wins, is not really about the victory for just the Edo people. It's almost like a victory for democracy, whereby you see the idea of godfatherism being triumphed over and pushed over, and it just feels like people are just really about that type of rhetoric, as opposed to just one person.
Definitely, and even yesterday, because again it was still so very early on in the process, there was also discussion about whether or not Osagie Eze-Iyami would be able to capitalize over him being marketed as a grassroots politician, an Edo man or a Benin man from to the core, him being there and not leaving, as opposed to Obaseki, who's obviously traveled and established himself in other parts of the country. So it's been an interesting one, to say the least.
Yes.
And while we wait for the next LGAs to be announced, we'll continue our analysis. Well, we do think that we have Victor Okhai with us in the studio. Good morning to you, Victor. As OG and I were saying, we're still waiting for the next 5, I believe, LGAs to be announced. But as it stands, it does look as though the People's Democratic Party are in a good position so far. What are your thoughts on that?
It's not totally unexpected. First, there's the incumbency factor on the one hand, and do not forget that the governor is living APC would probably still have sympathizers and loyalists within the party. But much more than that, in my analysis yesterday, I mentioned the factor of external interference, which is something that Edo people do not take very lightly, and it was one of the factors that resulted in the large turnout, even if to prove that Edo people are capable of managing their affairs. And then...
Sorry to interrupt you there, Victor. When you say external factors, is that looking at perhaps the APC? We had Tinubu come out and say that, Obaseki was a dictator and the like. Is that what you mean?
That's exactly what I mean. I mean, the Edo people have dignity, especially in poverty, not just even in poverty. They won't take such... I mean, they can fight among themselves, but they will not take that. It's peculiar, So that singular factor it cannot be overlooked. And then, if you want to break it down, clearly, Edo Central is a PDP stronghold, has always been. Although they're the minority senatorial district, that's where the Esan people come from, Aneni, Ikemi, and the rest of them. So they've always, I mean, they are like the opposition in APC, if you like. They have always been a PDP stronghold. And so you can be sure that as the results begin to come in, you will see it reflected that, you know, PDP is going to have a clear lead there. In Edo North, obviously, the former governor, what's his name now, Oshiomhole, did quite a lot of infrastructural development in Edo North, and it will be reflected in the results because people do not forget. Another thing to consider is the fact that the APC candidate chose his deputy, a Muslim from that area. Now, the Muslims have not been adequately represented at that level in the state. You know, this is the first time that they're probably getting to such a very prominent position. And from Edo North, which is predominant, which has a lot of Muslims. So, and they are thankful about that, and that will reflect in the result. But it's still going to be slim. And the reason I say it's slim is that both Shaibu and the deputy are from there, and Oshiomhole. So, and Shaibu being the incumbent deputy governor is also a very strong grassroots politician and mobilizer as well. So it's going to be neck to neck. So what you're going to find there is, okay, slim victory, but whatever victory you get from Edo North will be wiped with the gaps you're going to get from Edo Central. And then the real battle zone, like what I said yesterday, because I tried to look at it and calculate, is going to be Edo South, which is where both candidates are from. And so in Edo South, you would have Izeyamu, obviously, doing very well in some parts. Obaseki, ordinarily on his own, you might say, I mean, he will have a lot of support, but another factor that will help him a lot is the person that I would say really, the biggest local government area in Edo South, what's it called now? I think it's Oredo or so, is the person that the member of House of Reps there, Obede Eyama, who was to be the candidate of the PDP, he was a leading candidate, is firmly in control. In past elections, he has defeated, you know, APC fair and square with a wide margin in that area. And he's solidly behind the governor, and, you know, so you can be sure that there's going to be a lot of gap from that area. Now, that being said, the results at the polling units are one thing. What finally gets announced, you know, at the final collation center is another. And that's where the challenge is. So we'll have to wait and see, which is why the Edo people are watching and guarding their votes very jealously. We just hope that everything is, you know, that is fair and square. It's too early for anyone to say that they are going to win yet, because we have seen cases where a person is leading until the final moment when people realize what the gap will be, and then one local government area suddenly makes up for all the difference.
Understood. Victor, I'm so sorry to interrupt you there. It is time for us to take a short break. When we return, we will continue our analysis with Victor Okhai about these Edo state elections. Please do stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Well, our Arise correspondent, Egosa Gumbo, is ready to give us updates on the gubernatorial election in Edo State. Good morning, Egosa. How are you?
Good morning, OJ.
Okay.
I'm doing well, thank you.
Perfect. So would you bring us up to speed? What is the atmosphere there like at this moment?
Well, at the moment, collation of results at the state level is ongoing. This has long started, and already 13 local governments out of 18, a result of 13 local governments out of 18 have been announced here, but at the moment they are on break. And let me quickly quickly give you a recap or rundown of the results announced so far. From Okhai East, we have the APC in the lead with 19,295 and the PDP with 14,762. And in Okhai West, we have APC with 11,193 and the PDP with 11,485. In Ego, we have APC at 10,202 and the PDP at 27,621. At Uno, the local government area, we have APC 5,972 and the PDP 10,002. In Oredo local government, we have the APC at 18,365 and the PDP having 43,498. In ASAM, we have the APC trailing with 7,189 over the PDP's 17,400.
Not to interrupt you, Elsa, but it sounds as though there seems to be some type of audio issue. I don't know if you want to take a few seconds to adjust your mic, because we'd really like to hear the rest of those results, but we're getting some type of interference on your mic. So if you just take a moment while OG and I discuss that. So from those results that I know he didn't get through a lot of them, but again, it does look as though the PDP, the People's Democratic Party, have secured more votes in those local government areas than their APC counterparts. Yeah. And we will continue to ask our analysts, and of course also when he comes back, whether or not this was expected, how surprising this was, because yesterday on our show we were discussing about traditional strongholds and how they may change at this election, because traditionally a stronghold is loyal to a party. And obviously, when we see the PDP winning by such a huge margin, it does lead one to believe that perhaps strongholds are now shifting away from APC under Obaseki as the governor, with the APC to Obaseki as governor, as PDP. So with Victor, I'm sure you heard Elsa's statement just there. I know he didn't get through a lot of the results that he had there, but so far, what is your assessment? Are you still unsurprised with what he's read out?
I'm unsurprised. If you listen to the results very well and you're familiar with the local government areas in Edo State, when you hear places like Onwa, when you hear places like Etsako, when you hear places like, you know that these are Edo North. And like I said, you would get a slight margin. Obviously, it will lead in those areas. The reason being that Oshomole did a lot of infrastructural development there, and there's a sense of loyalty. I also talked about the deputy governor factor. A lot of the Muslims in Edo State are from that part, and they have a Muslim deputy governor. So loyalty would, it would show there. But, going to the central, I can assure you there's no way that they would take any local government area in the center. Maybe
that's a good way for us to throw back to Elsa. Yes. Still with us in Benin, please. Yes. I also hope you can hear us now, and we're hoping that we can hear you clearly. If you could continue on that tally of the results you were reading there.
I was saying.
Oh no, it sounds like
yes, it does seem like now we have him. Oh.
No, it does sound as though there's still a few technical issues with Elsa. We're really eager to speak to him. Victor, if we could go back to you, I'm sorry, if you could continue your point. You were saying that putting a Muslim in such a prominent position was a good move for them up in Edo North.
Well, it was a strategic move. It was strategic, and it's not a position. So let's just say that Eze did a bit of balancing in that, and that helped. But how that translates at the end of the day is something that we'll have to wait and see. But what we're discussing right now, the story behind the figures, or if you like, the story behind whatever forecast, I'll be making or that we'll be making. But clearly, I'm not surprised at the figures at all. That's the way that's what's to be expected. That's how they have worked, and that's reflective of the strategy that they have deployed right now, both sides. And also, if you do a bit of analysis of where they're coming from, their traditional strongholds and all the shifts in alliances, this is what it will amount to.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the conduct of the INEC right now at this point, which is, highly debated. People are saying that, the portal, which the collation portal, which they have deployed at this point, is, a bit shaky because sometimes the results are not trailing in as often as it should, and also well, how confident are you with the collation process, and how would you, in your assessment, how would you think that they have fared?
You know what they say in the movies? It's a sign of coming attractions. Okay. Now, what does that mean? When it's convenient, INEC will talk about they'll bring digital technology to play, and when it's not convenient, they will say, "Oh, the act that sets them up does not recognize that." You recall what happened in the 2019 election, where they talked about transmitting results electronically, and then later, the server or no server, and then later they shifted everything. Now, I'm highly suspicious, and I'll tell you why. The portal was set up probably in anticipation of more favorable results. And I make bold to say this, and right now, it doesn't appear to be working that way, and it's not in their interest to get that real-time online transmission of results.
In whose interest? Not in whose interest?
Well, however, I don't know how, in whatever interest, that's the way I want to put it. I'm on your station. I also want to be mindful about what I say on your station and how I say it. So I'll be speaking responsibly, if you permit me. So whatever we say now, we'll just say. But obviously, we have seen trends. In saying whatever I say, I like to do a bit of trend analysis. Look at the past, what has happened, and then use it to analyze what is happening right now. Now, there's that on the one hand. Then another thing, again, that makes me suspicious is what you call it now, the card reader. You know that where there's no card reader, you cannot tell exactly who and who has been properly accredited, okay? And so that is another opening for fraud, electoral fraud, because you now say, okay, the card reader, so let's abandon the card reader. And so if 50% show up on the day, and there are, on a particular polling unit, you have an opportunity to fill up the whole, everybody, 100% of the people that are registered in that polling unit as having, voted, and so you begin to use that to make up for whatever lapses, on the assumption that you have strong people who can even, guide and monitor the results there, So the way it is right now, I'm very suspicious. INEC has absolutely no excuse. They brought the zipper, they're not using it. They have, if you're working anywhere and you have 21 years experience, plus more, because INEC was set up before the 1999 election. They started, they were set up and they started preparing. So call it 21 years or 22 years experience. They have absolutely no excuse. They're inexcusable. I do not understand why they can't get their act together after 21 years. And let no one tell me that, okay, there's nothing. They're learning, they ought to have mastered this thing. They should, and they have so much money. They have a direct line to make sure that the budget is released well ahead of time so that there are no excuses, okay? So whether on the technological side, whether on the human side or whatever, INEC has absolutely no excuse. Those card readers ought to be working. This is only one state. Which means that if you have to deploy all the card readers in the country to Edo State to make sure that if anyone fails, you have a backup, you do that by all means, okay? So they have, with Edo State being only one state election, they have a plan A to Z, okay? They have as much. A to Z is just 26, and we have 36 states and the federal capital, So INEC is, I'm highly suspicious, and if anything goes wrong, they cannot be held. They cannot be innocent, because they're compromising the process right now.
But at least now we are able to view some of the reports online. Would you give them some sort of credit for that? At least
No, I was excited when I saw that. But why the hiccups? That's the question. It's exciting when the results are coming and then suddenly somebody says, "Oh, stop it." You know what I mean? And because if it's not favorable, you know that as soon as it hits that portal, you cannot change it. As soon as it hits the portal, you can't change it. And so the minute you hear that there are hitches or glitches or whatever, in the transmission of the results to that portal, then it gives room for suspicion. Because the portal is official. Now that's not, you can't talk about fake news here. That's not some random blog or blogger, displaying a result. That is INEC. That is official. And for INEC to now begin to say to me, for one reason or the other, sorry, there are hitches and all that, no. They have first-class facilities. They have enough money to get first-class IT specialists, first-class IT facilities and backbone or whatever. So there's absolutely no excuse. We can get results real-time, on time, as they're being released. Yeah.
Do you think we can well, let me not say we can expect, but because INEC have obviously ticked some boxes but have left a few unchecked, and therefore that's what we're talking about. Yes. As we look ahead to Ondo next month, less than a month away, October 10th, do you think that that's enough time for INEC to ratify whatever issues that they have, so that once we do reach that election, we won't be having these conversations?
INEC has no problem. They have there's no issue. There has been no election, not any major one that I know of, since February. When was the election last year? February, March. Okay, so they had ample time to prepare for this one election to be followed by the Ondo election. They had enough time to practice if they have to, to do all the trials. So there is nothing to perfect for Ondo election. Everything that they ought to have done, they know. And the thing about IT is it's an exact science. Garbage in, garbage out.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Z-pad in which you're referring to, they have said that, they had tested it and it wasn't working, and that's why they excluded it from this Edo election.
Very good. Thank you very much. So if they tested it, so who procured the Z-pad? Who recommended it and why? I would fire whoever was responsible. I would fire INEC for wasting taxpayers' money. Didn't they have time to test it? Didn't they have time to prove it? How could they come and be telling us? How can they come at this time and be telling us about a Z-pad not working? And you procured the Z-pads. Why did you do it if you knew it wasn't working? Didn't you have time to test it? Didn't you have, other contractors to bid? What was the procurement process? This is raising more questions than answers, if you ask me. So for me, this is absolutely no excuse. I wouldn't take it. I don't know if other Nigerians would. I certainly hope not.
Yeah, Victor. Well, yes. On the topic of speaking to more Nigerians, we do have Aosa hopefully back on the ground with us. Okay. Aosa, if you could continue on with your collation of results there. I know that we've been struggling to hear you so far. Hopefully that will not be an issue any longer. Hope you can hear us.
All right, thank you very much, Femi and OG. Yes, I was saying that so far results from 13 local governments have been announced here at the Collation Center, and members of INEC are currently on a 1-hour break, pending when the results from 5 other local governments will arrive. And so far, a quick rundown of the results announced. We have from Okhai East, APC leading with 19,295, and the PDP 14,762. In Okhai West, we have APC with 11,193 and the PDP with 11,485. In Ego, we have the APC at 10,202 and the PDP 27,621. In another local government, the APC has 5,972 votes with the PDP 10,022. Now, in Oredo local government, the APC polled a total of 18,365 and the PDP polled 43,498. In Asan West, APC had 7,189 and the PDP had 17,434. In Asan Southeast, APC polled a total of 9,237 while the PDP polled 10,563. In Ovia Northeast, APC had 9,907 and the PDP had 16,987. In Igwebe local government, the APC had 5,199 and the PDP had 7,870. SN Northeast, the APC had 6,556 while the PDP had 13,579. And of course, in SN Central, the APC had 6,719 and the PDP had 10,794. And the Okhai local government, the APC had 18,218 and the PDP had 41,030. Well, that's the results so far, and it does appear that PDP might be having an early lead from the counts.
When we look at the next 5 local government areas to be announced, is there enough for them to level the playing field? I know that we don't know and we can't really expect for certain where those votes are going to go, but with the 15 that you've called out now, the 13 apologies, with the more than a dozen you've called out now, it's obviously clear that the PDP have secured more votes than the APC. And so with these next 5, hypothetically speaking, if the APC were to take all 5 of them, would that give them an overall majority? Or as it stands, can we now say that PDP does look as though they have secured a majority to take this election?
Well, Femi, that is indeed very difficult to tell at the moment because I don't know how significant the number of votes coming from those 5 local governments would be at the moment. Because looking at the situation on ground here, we see some cancellation of results as a result of either ballot box snatching or snatching of the ballot papers or even violence. So it's hard to tell how that will play out. But as you already know from recent elections, we know that majority of votes usually come from Edo South. And you know Edo South has 7 local governments, while Edo North has 6 local governments and Edo Central has 5 local governments. So we can't tell really how that is going to play out as we await the result from the 5 local governments.
Well, Agosa, in your opinion, still speaking about the atmosphere there, would you say that this election was keenly contested, or would you say that it was a walk in the park?
Well, from reports that we got, it didn't seem like it was going to be an easy one because we saw groups, different political parties. We saw how their campaigns went. We saw how things played out, the tension and all of that. And we thought it was going to be a very difficult one. But thankfully, the security agencies put things in place. So I can't clearly say for a fact, that this party had an upper hand over anyone. Even the PDP that appears to be in the lead now had complaints. We heard the governor yesterday saying that INEC was not fully prepared for this election because of the issues with the smart card reader, even when the APC appeared to be applauding the independent electoral body for putting up a good showing. So if you look at it both ways, one cannot clearly say, what they're feeling at the moment.
While you've discussed the fact that both parties at different types or different points of this election have had different opinions on the performance of INEC, we are expecting, of course, the collation to continue within the hour and for the last 5 local government areas to be announced. In terms of the feeling, or if there is any feeling of tension on the street there, do you think that once the results are collated and are confirmed, do you think it will be a very easy and clear and safe concession from one party to the other? Or do you think that this will end up in court where the losing party will not accept this final result?
I didn't quite hear some part of the question, but I'm guessing you are trying to get the sense of feeling whether they are going to accept the result.
Yes.
And that in itself, I think INEC made their job much easier when they decided to create the portal, and then use the ZPAR to transfer results from polling units onto that portal. So there's going to be, any I can't say for a fact really if they're going to accept the outcome of the result, but it's most likely that from what they see on the portal and then the confirmation of results announced here, I mean, there shouldn't be any need for any kind of complaints. And then don't forget, we also have civil society organizations who are also doing their collation on the other hand. So they are going to put all these things together and to see if there are any discrepancies, and that in itself might give some kind of assurance or some kind of belief in the results being announced here.
Thank you so much for your analysis. I'm sure we'll be speaking to you very soon. Elsa, thank you so much for that. Victor, you've heard what Elsa had to say there. What are your thoughts on that?
Exactly in line with my analysis, I can tell you that. Hey, Edo North, you can see the gap. I mean, I talked about Oredo, and you can see the gap, 43,000 to, is it 10,000 or 7,000, and then Ovia. So the Edo South, you can see, I mean, the gap is, and that to me is supposed to be the battleground, because that's where both candidates are from. But the gap is also, whatever is coming from the other local government, Oredo is the biggest, so you can't get more votes from any other, I mean, unless you want to cook them up, okay? So the real big ones, go Ovia North, or is this, and what do you call it now?
Oredo.
Oredo, you can see, I mean, the gap is just too much. Okay, so it just wipes out whatever gains you get from Edo North. And like I said to you as well, look at what is happening in, you know, Igwebe, Esan, you know, you can see the way it is clearly. Like I said, it's a PDP stronghold. So clearly they're winning all of that. And the fact that what should have been the battleground, Edo North and South, really, I would say both are battlegrounds, but we can understand Edo North because of Oshomole and what he's done there before, and the deputy governor of what do you call it now, of APC, that factor. But much more important right now is what is happening in Edo South. And I told you about the Ogbedeyama factor as well, because he's very, very strong, very much on ground. And the minute he stepped down for Obaseki, he promised to give him all his support. And for me, that is a man to beat, you know, and that has reflected in this result. So I don't know what the Gumbo is saying, but quite frankly, I think the results already speak for themselves. And I'm saying that without any sentiments, because I've tried to analyze and give you reasons, you know, why the results, the story behind the figures, you know, as expected and as is unfolding right now.
Indeed. You know, in the run-up to this election, there was lots of discussion about how this would be definitely fiercely fought, which it has been, but also too close to tell. Do you still think that that is the case? Because as we run through the results that we have, it does look as though the PDP have blown the APC out of the water in many different areas. Tell us your thoughts on that very briefly before we go on break.
You know, there are even psychological factors to consider in this matter. The sympathy of the world is always with the weak. When there's perceived injustice,
Victor, I have to stop you there, but please do keep those fantastic points in mind. We'll be going to a short break.